David, I haven't seen you for a few years.
Yes, yes. We go way back.
That's great. That's great. So Ed, you want to start us out? Or Kristen?
Well, just
Or
welcome.
do,
We're always happy, to have Think Again and Faith Again here, and because it brings in such interesting people with good spirits, and it just transforms our place into a really holy, wonderful place. There's a bathroom right there in the hall, and you're all welcome. Thanks.
thank you, Ed and Kristen, for hosting. Appreciate it very much. And thanks to all of you for being here. Madison, thank you for suggesting Rich. Appreciate it.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Yeah. And always hosting Zoom. I appreciate that, and helping me with the technical stuff. Yes. Thank you. Appreciate it. And for all of you being here. Michael Maxwell is here with LDS Earth Stewardship Chapter President of Salt Lake. Right? Yeah, so thank you for supplying homemade bread, you and your good wife.
It's actually my co-chair that's bringing the bread.
Oh, okay,
My wife, it's not able to make it.
okay. And your co-chair is
Shelley Parkin.
Oh, yeah, Shelley.
Shelley.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, should be at her
okay.
with the homemade bread any minute. Yeah, there's that.
Well,
And,
thank you.
And I do get to put in my shameless plug for a week from Saturday morning.
Yes,
We're
please.
sponsoring a service project out of Great Salt Lake, so if anybody wants to get out to the lake, appropriate for all ages. We got one of the park rangers is gonna give us a naturalist talk to learn a little bit more about the hydrology and the geology, and then we're gonna help you with some cleanup in a couple hours, so if you can,
So not this Saturday, next Saturday.
not this Saturday, but Saturday.
But now let's talk about what's coming up this Saturday with Mormon women at the Maywag.
Creation Care Coalition.
Yeah, I'll actually, you wanna?
Yeah.
be honest? I've looked enough already, and you're as involved with it.
You're part of climate change, climate lobby, right?
Well, Creation Care Coalition
Okay,
is a coalition of 4 organizations. LDS Earth Stewardship. I'm with the Citizens Climate Lobby, LDS Action Team. We have MWEG, Mormon Women for Ethical Government. And we have Mason, Mormon Earth Stewardship Alliance.
yeah.
And the 4 December events, somewhere around December day event, we have a panel, an interfaith panel about sustainability. And we have a moderator who has an interesting background.
She's a neighbor of mine, Kelly. She lives down the street from me.
Yeah.
Next door to the rabbi, I learned.
All right.
Yeah,
Yes.
down, and the rabbi lives down the end of the street from me.
Rabbi Spector
Yeah.
will be there representing
Great.
Jewish faith. We have someone representing Muslim faith. We have an LDS stake president. And we had an Episcopal most reverend. He's having surgery,
Yeah.
so we don't think he'll be coming. I don't know if we have a substitute yet.
As far as I know, we haven't found a substitute
We
yet.
may just have the 4.
I have a friend from the Episcopal, the St. Mark.
Well,
I could put you, and he's very environmentally.
We're looking for
Yeah,
Okay.
another
Yeah,
panel, so let's
yeah,
talk about that.
After, yeah,
that's a big loss that he can't.
yes, it would be
But that's this Saturday at 6 o'clock.
excellent. Yeah, I'm looking forward to
Hybrid
it.
event, but the Dome Chapel is a really nice place to go downtown.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a nice venue to be in person.
Where is it?
So-
Oh, it's that church.
Dome Chapel, but it's
Yeah.
21st South,
17th
7th East, and that area.
Very cool. Good stuff to celebrate Earth Day. All right, let me check my list here. Sure I haven't forgotten something like I usually do. By the way, you're looking at Rich right there. So, I think, okay, Rich. So Rich has to leave a little earlier than usual that we would have our presenter, because he is a doctor and he's gonna be doing some rounds for a doctor that's not feeling so well tonight, right?
Just two patients, but Dave knows of it, so.
Every patient's important.
Fine.
There's Shelley. How are you? Hi, good.
This is Liz.
Hi, how you doing? Okay, so I think we got everything pretty much covered. So have you sit here?
Me?
Yeah, we'll trade places.
You're the boss.
Sure you're looking.
So
over
you want
there.
me to sit, so.
So now, if you haven't, if you don't know much about Rich, then go to my website, ThinkAgain-FaithAgain.live, and his bio is on there. Amazingly impressive bio. I don't know how you get so much energy. You're just everywhere. You just got back from somewhere, right?
Yeah, we were teaching medical students in Mohammed tomorrow morning. We're leaving to go to teach medical students in Zion. We have 65.
You're a medical student? He's always looking for a reason to go to Zion.
I know.
And you teach, tell them what you just teach real briefly.
Well, I feel awkward being on the spot. I don't like it. I'll tell you,
Sorry.
no.
Wait, let's read, so.
No,
we
no,
have-
I get it.
We have a
I-
Zoom audience.
No, so I'm a professor at the University School of Medicine where I teach 4 classes. And I teach a class at Ohio State University where I'm on their faculty. And then I teach 3 undergraduate classes. I teach physics. My PhD was in biophysics, so I teach the pre-med physics program, and we try to get our undergraduates ready for medical school. So I teach a lot of undergraduate classes, and I teach at the med school, and I do preventive cardiology to keep people's hearts beating so they don't die.
It's important.
So that's what I do. But the cool thing is I get to hang out with young people, like really young kids. It's fun.
Like
One of my-
Madison, he's pretty young,
Well,
but even
it's,
younger.
no, I teach 18 and 17-year-olds. Uh-oh. You did not tell me. That's gotta go.
Rich, can I put in a plug? You taught my son
I
at
did,
Zion Park.
I
a number of
did,
years ago.
I
Yeah,
did.
great time.
I was
Well,
actually there.
And this is intensive wilderness medicine.
Well, so it plays into my view of the environment. There, I don't separate the two. Being safe and doing medicine in the backcountry and preserving the outdoors, they all are the same thing to me. And my love of the outdoors and my love of outdoor medicine brought that whole thing together. And am I starting to talk now?
You're on. I thought I'd ease you into it, just.
So the day after I graduated from medical school, I was riding with my friend Paul Schmutz, who this young lady knows, and we saw a biker crash. And I didn't really know what to do. And it was the day after I graduated from medical school. And so I said, then I saw Paul, my friend who's an EMT, he's also my dentist. He never gives me a discount. But sometimes he does. But he was an EMT in addition to being a dentist. And he went through this process of triaging this guy. And that was just so impressive to me. So when I was finished with my training, we started there was no program of education of treating medical doctors and nurses and PAs, whatever, how to treat injuries in the backcountry. So when I joined the faculty here, that's what we started. And simultaneously, the whole idea of restoring the Colorado River came out. So they grew up together. And so to me, the reason you are going in the backcountry safely is to preserve the backcountry safely. And so I kind of view those as the same thing. My mother gave me my environmental roots, and I'm so grateful for that. She was a granddaughter of Brigham Young, and she comes from pioneer stock, and she was a very wonderful lady and very tough, but she taught me tolerance, tolerance of all people. My oldest sister was gay, and I grew up with a gay sister thinking people are gay, and I didn't understand it when people would go after my sister. Later on, it was very unnerving to me, but my mother taught me tolerance and to respect other people's views, even though they weren't mine. But she held a real strong standard, but she had a standard for the environment and social issues that I adhere to this day. So I can't tell you about my view of the environment than anything stronger than my mother's view of that and how much she loved the environment and taught me to be respectful of people and plants and animals and of whether you're gay or not, or that was how I grew up. So that's where I started. But you don't want to hear about wilderness medicine, right?
Right, no, we want to hear about what you've just been talking about. You're doing good.
Okay.
Yeah. Wait, what do you think your grandmother got her strong passion for the environment?
My mother or my,
You said was
this is my mother.
your mother, that's right. She was a granddaughter.
She was a granddaughter of
of
Brigham Young.
Brigham Young. Who
But so
was,
she-
yeah.
She had this pioneer stock in her, and she was a woman of the land, and she loved the earth. And we would be driving somewhere up by kind of going to where you live, up, and she would say, "Ah, look what they're doing to our mountains," and she would be mad at that. And she just taught me to preserve. So the thing that happened, and I'll tell you, life is spontaneous, and you really don't know. Then maybe you want to have questions.
Sure, yeah, I'd love it.
So, the wilderness medicine program, which is now insanely huge, I had no idea that it would get as big as it is. Our school of medicine has this vast educational program to teach people how to treat illnesses, things in the backcountry, and a lot of people have gotten involved with that, and it just hit the nail on the head. It was hard. I didn't have any idea that it would be so big, and it's been a great ride. But the environmental route, I have to tell you how this started, and maybe we can each say how yours started. My mother, as I said, taught me to love the environment, but I never was like an activist or went after it. My mother taught me the term nature lover, and we've gotten away from that. We now call ourselves environmentalists, but most people are not environmentalists, but most people are nature lovers. We've had this discussion. Dennis and I work together down at SUA. Both of us are not with SUA now.
Make that clear.
No hard feelings there.
No, I was their vice chairman, but I just got so busy in other things, and but anyway, I think that we need to get back to being nature lovers. Because if you go to someone on the street and you say, "Do you love nature? Do you want to preserve it?" Yes. Are you environmentalist? No. And I think we need to get away from that principle. So I don't like calling myself an environmentalist at all. I don't like that whole concept of it. It's just a philosophy that I had from my mother. But what turned me into being more active was right when I was still in medical school, one of my young friends invited me to a play down at the Capitol Theater. It was a one-man play about John Muir.
Mm,
It was just a one man up there with a Scottish accent talking about saving, they were trying to stop the Shaughnessy Dam
yeah.
down in Hetch Hetchy. And I didn't really know much about that. And this play really opened my mind. First, it was a great play, and the man was a great actor, but it went through phone calls and letters and explaining it, went over a period of some months. And then he gets the phone call that they've decided to build the dam. And it was heartbreaking. It was just heartbreaking to hear that. And then John Muir died. It killed him. I mean, the fight for that just destroyed him. He didn't commit suicide or anything. He just was older, and it just took the life right out of him, and it was heartbreaking. And so I began to study the Sierra Club and understand how it worked. And then I became familiar with David Brower. However, so this may be something that you'd be interested in how your environmental nature loving work goes. When I was a young boy, I went with our scout troop down to a little city with a few buildings called Page, Arizona. And this was tiny. It was a construction town, but we were going to go up and see Glen Canyon before it went underwater. And so we went down to what was then going to be Wawit. It was a marina, but not really. The lake had begun to fill, but it was very shallow. It didn't go anywhere. And in order to go up the river, you had to go down to the dam. We went right to the dam and stared at that thing, and then and I just looked at that. What on earth? And then my young eyes looked up and they said, look at that place up there. This will all be underwater one day. See that little notch? The water will go right through that, and boats will be able to go through that. But we have to go down, but one day. And I asked this guy, like, why are they building this dam? He didn't know. So then we come up to Forbidden Canyon, which is the entrance to River Bridge. And we knew that we'd have about a 2.5 hour hike up to the bridge, which to a little set of legs was long. And but it was pools and waterfalls and water skiers, and we slid down it. And one of the guides said, when the boat said, better enjoy this now, because next year this is all going to be underwater. And that really made me sad. And I asked this guy again, there's another guy, why are you putting underwater? He goes, oh, they're building the dam. Why? I don't know, they're just building a dam. I had no idea why they built dams. And so we hiked up Rainbow Bridge, played around that, and then we hiked back down, slid back down. And then we went across basically what was a river. It probably was slack water to a big alcove with swallows and these ferns hanging, where we ate lunch and we just gobbled food down. And again, they said, this is going to be guns underwater, you'll never see it again. And of course I just memorized those things, and they're still in my mind. And the next time that I went to Lake Powell at Waweep, we boated up Forbidden. Oh, one other thing, they told us it's the second canyon on the left, Bridge Canyon. And if you miss it and you go up, you'll get lost in the desert forever. It scared us. So we were counting. Is that the first one? Like, and then we go up to Bridge Canyon and we hike our way up. And then the next time I went down, we were in a boat and we boated up where I had walked. And I was on the right side and I stared down in that water. And it was the most painful thing I think I've ever had, and outside of the death of loved ones in my life, just to see this gone like that. And I was angry, like the true anger at this, like what on earth? And I would stare the other times we go down and wonder what was under there. And then we became involved with river rafting. This is the subject I think you want. So river rafting became a part of the life, and it became my sport. And I fell in love with rivers, and I don't think you can hate people. I mean, some people you might make an argument for in history or modern time, but I think you can hate disease and hate cancer. Right? I mean, so a kid today is 5 years old and has cancer, leukemia, and I can hate that cancer. Can't I? The kid was cute. She's brave, and but we float Cataract Canyon, and it would go down these big rapids, and then it would just stop. And here was this gorgeous river and flows and things that, if I can say, nature, God had created. And here was what man had destroyed. And every year I hit that thing, and every year I hit it, I hated like cow, more and more and more and more and more. And we'd have to walk our boat out on sediment because we couldn't turn our motors on. We'd have to walk 3 or 4 miles and just drag our boats on the top of Lake Powell till a boat could come pick us up. And this was my story for year after year. And then year after year. And then I was down there with Peter, and I just said, I can't stand this another minute. I can't just spend the rest of my life not doing something about this. So I was on the boat and we were motoring out, and there was a TV news reporter there that was friends of my nephew, whose name was Rod Decker.
Right.
He was from Channel 2.
Yeah.
And I got to know him quite well. And he went on a number of times with us, but that was the first time. And I looked at him and I said, I'm going to get rid of this. Like, I'm going to make it my life cause. And he stared at me, like, really? He said, well, make a case for me. I had absolutely no idea what to do. I had no idea how you could get rid of Lake Powell. I didn't know why it was there. I had no knowledge for this thing at all. But it turned out that serendipity is really good, because the laws and everything that were against it were so enormous that anybody with a mind would just say, this is ridiculous. But I had no such preconceived motive. So I named an organization that hadn't been founded yet, and I called it the Glen Canyon Institute, later shorter, just Glen Canyon Institute. Because I found out if you're gonna name something, either put the "the" in the name or not, like the University of Utah. So everybody said, no, you just have to call it Glen Canyon Institute, not the. So it was later changed, but nevertheless, that was its name. And I went home and I got all on fire about this idea to train my cow. Why not? You know, like, nothing to lose. So I didn't know how hard it was gonna be. But the hard part was not what I thought. So I go and I write these 11 goals of the Glen Canyon Institute. And the first one was to have a yearly meeting and discuss this, start a library, a special collection section, and get this, that, get scientists, artists, everything. So we started this list. And so there we were, the Glen Canyon Institute, this powerful little environmental organization of one. I went out and it became a 501c3, and we were off. My first chore was to hold our first annual meeting. And I thought, well, who should we get to debate? But we're gonna do this every year. And I thought, well, nobody better in the whole world would be better than getting, subsequent to that play, I found a book called The Life and Times of David Brower, who had really made the Sierra Club big. It started, when he took it over, it had 7,000. When he was fired, it had 77,000 members in it, and he took it into an activist organization, which is why to this day, the Sierra Club is schizophrenic, because part of it's a hiking club and part of it's an activist, and they don't agree with each other. They just don't. And Brower was an activist, so was John Muir, but he came upon that late in life. When fighting for the against the Shawnee Dam, he fought against it. So now Brower he's turned it into an activist organization, and this was to the chagrin of all the hikers. They didn't want to do it. But Brower was he ran his life. I don't know. Do you know who David Brower is?
Don't.
You don't?
You might want to talk about him. He's a powerful force of nature.
Well, so David Brower was the first true environmentalist in the world. He was the first person there were no environmental laws when he started, and when he ended, there were. And he gave us the environmental laws under the Nixon and Republican administrations back in the late 60s. That was David Brower. The Endangered Species Act, the Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act. You can all point to David Brower to getting those through. The ESA was an acclaimed vote of both houses of Congress. They didn't even vote on it, they just approved it. 100% vote. That was a tribute to him. But nevertheless, David Brower was the Sierra Club. And the thing about David Brower, if you see a photo of him, like you just melt to look at him. He was his charismatic, charming, dashing man with white hair staring off in the distance. Like, I saw that photo of him and I said, I got to get to know this guy. So in the book, he talks about Glen Canyon and he has the camera. And I said, I got to get that video. I want to see the canyon. This is what you want to hear?
Yeah,
Stay the route.
great.
Okay. I don't know. I can tell you jokes.
You can throw those in if you want, but
So I called David Brower's assistant. I called David Brower. I called the Sierra Club and I said, do you know how to get on David Brower? He's not with us anymore. I didn't know that. He had been fired. And not ceremoniously either. He was just fired. And he had started another organization and got fired from that. And now he's with a new organization. And the bylaw says he can't get fired. And the reason that's a true story, by the way. It's Earth Island. And the reason he kept getting fired is he ran with reckless abandon, honestly. I mean, I hate to say it, put anybody down, but he was the most inspirational environmentalist on the planet. But he was probably the most ineffective environmentalist. He gave us Glen Canyon Dam. He traded it away.
which he regretted after.
I heard that story a million times from him, but well, anyway, so Dave, I called his assistant. They gave me a number at the Sierra Club, and it was a guy named Chris, and Chris said, oh, we'd love to come up and talk and give a talk, but he doesn't want to talk, he wants to debate. And I said, who does he want to debate? And he goes, Floyd Dominy, the chief of the Bureau of Reclamation, who had built Glen Canyon Dam. I said, okay, how can I get hold of Floyd Dominy? There are these lions in the winter, right? And so how do you get a hold of Floyd Dominy? I had no idea. So I called the Bureau of Reclamation in Washington, DC. And I said, my name is Richard Ingebretsen, and I would like to get hold of Floyd Dominy. He's a former commissioner. Oh, his number's right here. She just gave me the number. It's at the front desk of the commissioner office. So I called him, and he is a redneck. And he said to me, and I say that with love, by the way. He said, I'll come out and I'll debate Brower, but I want a first class ticket and a nice hotel. So the Glen Canyon Institute is wealthy with money, me. And so I fly Brower out and I flew Floyd Dominy out and I met him. And my friend Paul Schmutz, who I'd done biking with, took him to dinner at the Yacht Club. And I got to know Floyd Dominy, this indomitable man who builds dams and has no love in the environment. And he and I became fast friends until he died. And
Did you say he has no love of the environment?
not really.
Hmm.
He loves dams. I mean, I had dinner with him in his house, and he has pictures of Hoover Dam and Glen Canyon Dam. He had 13 dams on his property, and it was cold when I was there. His dog was outside. He wouldn't let the dog in. He lived in the basement of a room. His wife had died, so it was like a mausoleum upstairs. He had one room with a fire going. He wouldn't let the dog in. It was pictures of dams. All over.
His life achievements.
Well, they were. I mean, they truly were. And but so we had dinner, and I said, Mr. Dominy, you are a very important man. When I called the front desk of the Bureau of Reclamation, your name was at the front desk and they gave me the number. You're very important. And he leaned forward like this. He says, I am the Bureau of Reclamation. Term. And he was a politician. So the next night, he and David Brower got together. And I don't know if you've read the book about the conversation with the Arch Druid, but the last time those two boys met was when they were on the boat with John McPhee 17 years earlier. And I brought them back together. And I subsequently read that book. I didn't even know about the book. This is how new I was. I was exploring new territory. And I had them debate on Rod Decker's show, and then we debated on live TV. Live at the University of Utah. We have videos of that. And it was an interesting debate. And the philosophy of the two were totally different. And so the next year, the Glen Canyon Institute met again. And now people are getting involved. And I invited, this is the first really big meeting. I got a hold of those videos from Glen Canyon from Dave Brower. He said, I've never seen them. I don't know where they are. So I called the Sierra Club. We have them, but we gave it to this man making a show called the Cadillac Desert. So I called those producers. They sent them to me. I preserved them. We restored them, and I advertised them as the lost films of David Brower. Showed it at Kingsbury Hall. It was sold out. Standing in the aisles to see David Brower, and they gave him a 12-minute standing ovation. That standing ovation changed the environmental world, it turns out, because we showed these videos, and I invited Katie Lee. Do you know who Katie Lee is? Have you heard of her? She was a wild woman from Arizona who had explored Glen Canyon naked. That's all I can say. She was an outspoken. She was the opposite of Floyd Dominy on the other side, but they were very similar people. I told Katie Lee once she'd like Floyd Dominy, and she swore at it. But they were very similar, but just different sides of a coin, right? So this meeting, we watched the films. David Brower spoke. That was on a Tuesday night. we chose Tuesday because of activities for students. Saturday, that a week from Saturday, they had a board meeting at the Sierra Club. And David Brower was so impressed with the fact that I could get 1,700 people to cheer him on, which was sheer whatever. And the fact that they had a meeting the next week where he was giving $500,000 in a grant that he had been given, he was giving it straight to the Sierra Club as a gift. And so he used that moment of giving them $500,000. Dave Foreman was on the board. Adam Werbach was this 19-year-old whiz kid running the Sierra Club. And he proposed to the Sierra Club that they should drain the reservoir behind Glen Canyon Dam. And Brower proposed it, Dave Foreman seconded it, and Carl Pope, who was the Sierra Club president then, said, let's vote on it, and it was a unanimous vote. And then Carl Pope said, don't anybody say this to the public until we figure out how to do it. Like, do not, this is too big a deal, because Sierra Club now has voted to drain Lake Powell. They didn't say that, but that's what they did. Well, I get a call that night from David Brower, and he said, I could see no good reason not to tell anyone this, so I called the New York Times, I called the New York Times, San Francisco Examiner. He said, I'm gonna call the Salt Lake Tribune on Monday, and I went, oh, no. I said, did you call the local chapter of the Sierra Club? Because they will want to know this. He goes, I don't know anything about that. So I did. I called the local chapter. And Lawson Legate, did you ever know him? He's a really good guy. Very soft-spoken guy. I said, and he and I became friends for some things we were doing. And I said, Lawson, I have to tell you this. He goes, what's that, Rich? And I said, the National Board of Directors was voted to in my house. He's silent for about like a minute. I realized, no. So then it took off. And if you've ever heard the expression, be caught with your pants down, National Geographic call, the Post call, and I watched the Post, New York Times, San Francisco, they're all calling. And CNN. And I'm in my office seeing patients. And I get a knock from my nurse. They say, Rich, CNN is on the phone. Oh, no. So I sit outside, this is Mrs. Johnson, I'll be right back. So I go to CNN, hey, we want to do a news article. Do you have a minute to talk? And I was like, no, I don't. So after about 2 months of that, I quit my job as a doctor. I couldn't do it. I had to choose between either working on river restoration or being a doctor. I couldn't be a good doctor and do the work in the environment. So I went into research where you could come and go as you please. And I gave up my full-time job as a doctor so that I had time, because it's not fair to the Mrs. Johnsons of the world, and travel and speak. And so for the next year and a half, 2 years, that's all I did was river restoration. But it was an interesting time because I went into drug research and doing stuff, so I was still in the business. But and then the whole Glen Canyon incident thing just took off, and it was amazing the people who wanted to come and join our board and help train the former commissioner of the Bureau of Reclamation wanted to be on there, deans of colleges, former Congress people, anybody that had anything. It was like a tinderbox. It was just amazing who sat. Al Gore's campaign manager joined our board when he ran for president. He sat there, and these bright men and women were just amazing as this thing took off. And the idea that you could actually drain the second largest reservoir in the world became a thing. And we were without credibility. So we hired the most eminent river biologist in the country. He's on our board, Dave Wegner. And we started to do scientific studies, raised $250,000, did all these studies, and that are still being used today. And the Bureau actually thanked us for the data we gave them, the sedimentation rate, the structure rate of the species, and we just went down the list. What was the hardest thing for me, though, and I said a while ago, the hardest thing in environmental movement to go after something like this was not the Bureau of Reclamation. They have a book of rules, and they open it up, and there's their rule, and they just follow it. They have no choice. On page 10, paragraph 2, it says we do this. You want to do what? Drain it? well, it's not in here anywhere, you know, they don't know how to do it. No, that's the story. We were really good friends. My challenge to this moment is to convince people to speak out and to be true to their beliefs and to fight for what they believe in, because people are afraid to, and my mother taught me, my father also, my dad was true, but my mom just was so powerful in this, is you have to stand up for what you believe in. One day, and I'll tell you these people, but one day we'd taken a whole truckload of people down to Cataract Canyon. The manager of Glen Canyon Dam sat next to the boat with Dave Foreman. Can you imagine that? He had a hat that said Earth First on it, which was not, that he sat with Dave Foreman, the founder of Earth First, on the same raft. And we got the national chapter of the Sierra Club with the local chapter, which hated each other, bureau people and environmentalists going down that river talking. That wasn't the problem. You know, the manager of Glen Canyon Dam said to us, look, I would drain Lake Powell. He said, I can turn a knob and drain it, but he said, I wish they hadn't flooded it, but I can't just go open it up. You know, like, I don't know how to do that. And, but that was an interesting night, but we're driving home from that trip. And I go to that Shell station in Helper. Have you all seen that? It's right there. It's been there forever. That those ladies run that store. They make the best egg salads in Utah, and they've got the best chocolate chip cookies. And it's in a gas station. Oh, I always stop there. I have a practice in Price. I always go there. I know those ladies. They are very proud of their food. It's good food. Anyway, I walk in there, and now it's almost midnight. And we're driving home. And there's the Salt Lake Tribune in the day when they had papers. And the front page story was an Associated Press story that had been written with connection with the Salt Lake Tribune. And the opening statement said, Richard Ingebretsen is nuts, says Junior Senator Orrin Hatch. That's how it started. And I went, oh, no, my mom read that.
She's going, yeah.
So this was Saturday night, and I didn't talk to her Sunday, but Monday at my condo, she calls me. And she had been at the hairdresser. And Marion Baldwin, who is nothing like that, was saying, what is up with your son? He's got these hair rings. So my mother called me and said, Rich, tell me what's going on, so I can tell people. So she said, I read that article and Orrin Hatch called you nuts. She said, just tell me. Like, so I explained it to her and what was going on. And she paused. And she paused. And then she goes, well, this is what Heavenly Father wants you to do. I support you. That's what my mom told me. For whatever you believe about God or religion, that's what my mother told me. She'd write me letters when she'd read strange things in the newspaper or something. She'd just let me know and say, keep up the good work. And the day she died, she was very supportive. And by the time she died, the movement had really advanced. And so she, but my challenge, and the true challenge we have, I think, in our lives, is to get people to stand up and do the right thing. And it's so discouraging to me when this happens. And we have a scientist that we work with who will not, he's a powerful scientist. And I'm so upset with him. I won't say who it is, you know who it is. But he worked with us as sort of a kitchen cabinet and give us these great ideas about how to do the science and convince the Bureau. And he even helped us write a paper which would take Lake Powell water and put it in Lake Mead. And the thought of filling Lake Mead first and keeping Glen Canyon as a backup, which, by the way, is something David Brower said at our very first board meeting. But I said, Dave, that no one will go after, lower the level of Lake Powell. I mean, you really have to have a drain Lake Powell. I mean, or you can't say, let's study the draining of Lake Powell. You know, it just doesn't ring true. So we didn't say it was just to restore Glen Canyon thing, but David Brower was right. He said the Bureau of Reclamation will buy off filling Lake Mead first at our first meeting. But now that's all we're pushing. But this one scientist helped us write it. We had meetings, it was his idea. His staff helped write it, put it together, and at our last meeting, we got it out there and we announced it. And the day it was announced, he criticized it. He said, this is wrong. Because he didn't want to be associated with it even. And so he, a news article said that this powerful scientist had criticized Glen Canyon Institute's spill need first proposal. And I could not believe it. We had met with him the week before and put his blessing on it. And I was angry. So I drove straight up to Logan and I sat down in the middle restaurant. I said, you wrote this. He goes, not many people know that, Rich. I said, why'd you do that to us? Like, and if this is the challenge, is people will not stand up for what they believe in. And this is him. He has this idea that if he can be in the background, and he gave a talk for us a couple weeks ago, and I didn't go to it because it's just the same old blather, like we're trying to be kind, but in the end, I think that's been the challenge, is standing up. Well, I understand politics. I'm not an idiot. I mean, I understand the politicians speak out of both sides of their mouth. They all are obfuscate the truth, but you look back at time and the scientists who stood for what they believed in. I mean, Robert Oppenheimer stood up and said, we cannot build a hydrogen bomb. I mean, he had deathbed repentance. I get it. Like, he made the bomb and said, we cannot do a hydrogen bomb. We've got to stop this. We've got to share things with all countries. So we don't, and then they threw him under the bus, but that's what he did. And I just see people, and Einstein was that way. He was always fighting for his views. I just read both books on those guys. That's why I'm familiar with them. Those are great books.
So the scientists that you're mentioning, you must have been able to go to dinner with and say, I want to talk to you about why you didn't support us. So what does he say? What did he tell you that why he reneged on his position publicly?
Well, I have to say, his logic, it's narcissism at its finest. And he knows what has to be done, but doesn't want to take the egg on his face. That's the reason.
He's afraid of repercussions to his status or his job.
Well, I thought that when this exploded in my face and people were calling me, I was on the news, I was going on the Western United States speaking everywhere, people were booing me, people got mad. I was out of my clinic at LDS Hospital. I was walking out one day and there was Santa Claus and I said, Merry Christmas. She bells, not to you, you want to train like pal, my mom, Orrin Hatch, but I just figured that comes with the territory. I was worried because I just joined the faculty at the School of Medicine. I was put on the selection admissions committee. I later was associate dean, and I was going to hurt my reputation. But I learned very early on that people admire people who stand up for what they believe if it's a good cause. I'm not, this is a decent cause, like restoring a river and saving the Grand Canyon, and people thought maybe. I think I can say this, Mike, because he says it publicly. One of my big patients back then was Governor Michael Levitt. And he always said, I think it's funny that my doctor wants to drain Lake Powell. Then he joined the Bush administration and I remained close to him. And he called me one night from the White House. And he said, I want to talk to you about why you want to drain Lake Powell. Now he's in HEW back then, not in this, but he was going to go down Cataract Canyon with his family and friends, and he wanted to know the issue. So here we've got a cabinet member calling me on the phone, respecting the fact that I have a belief, and I'm his doctor and I'm his friend, and he wants me to explain it to him. So that's what happens when you stand up. So for what you believe in, if it's a good cause, and that's what my mom taught me.
Well, you had a relationship with them, that helped. So the people you don't have a relationship with, let's say you call them affectionately rednecks that love Lake Powell. They love the nature, they love Lake Powell because they're boating on it.
Not
right?
everybody goes Lake Powell's a redneck.
No, I know.
Floyd Comedy, and I call Katie Lee one.
But what would be so make the case, try to picture them in front of you, make the case to them why this is a good idea to drain Lake Powell, why the rivers have value, because they're seeing value in boating on it, right? Spending time in nature, boating on top of it. What do you say to people like that? I know people like that, and I don't know how how to make that case to them very well.
Well, this is there are multiple challenges in draining Lake Powell and convincing it. And in the 25 years I've been involved with it, I've spoken to literally thousands and thousands of people. And you have to know your audience, and when you
Right.
stand up and speak, you have to be able to say now the argument is 100% different than it was when we started, because just last week it was announced the Bureau of Reclamation had done a study on the bypass
Yeah.
tunnels down there. They said you
Get
can't
it
use
and-
can't even use. Well, we knew this. We've known this for quite a while. So that means that the minute that Lake Powell hits dead pool, it's gone. They're studying, drilling in new bypass tunnels. We've won it. I mean, nature will ultimately just get it down there, and that'll happen next 10 years probably, and the battle will be over, and then the fill meet first. So we just have to keep pushing fill meet first, and so that they understand and push on the Grand Canyon and keep pushing that Grand Canyon is beautiful. So now we have a whole different argument. We have a legit, it's an unsafe structure. It's not capable of doing what it was designed to do. You built it wrong and it needs to be gone. And so the argument has changed, but back in that day, you had to show pictures and say, you can restore this and you can keep Lake Powell if you'll just build us another Glen Canyon. And we would take endless people down. And then in 2005, it was 100 feet down, which is half the storage of the reservoir. It's never even come close to being that full since 2000. Well, I can't say that. It came up that one in 2011 and
Yeah.
just quickly went right back down. But in 2005, we saw features that had been underwater for years. And ABC News Nightline with Ted Koppel went out there and filmed it. We did a live feed from Cathedral in the Desert. It's an hour-long show on why we need to make it a national park. And so we went from the water savings to making it a national park, which made Michael Kellett insanely happy back then. And so the argument has changed, but so it should be a national park. You save water, it's an unsafe dam, but right now the argument is very strong. The other issue is the Coachella Valley and what are they going to do down there with the water? That sounds like a stupid thing, but on the Mexican border, they are using so much Colorado River water. They use more water in those 100 farms than Nevada and Arizona's entire allotment of water. Because first in time, first in right, the dikes broke back in 1907 and flooded for 3 years, and then they created the Salton Sea, and now you have to keep the Salton Sea. You can't drain it because it's got toxic waste. So they can't. If they could, they would go to those 100 farmers and give them $1 billion and say, we're going to buy you houses on Newport Beach, and you don't get the water. And the farmers would say, okay, but wouldn't you? Someone offered you $500 million or $500 million. They have that kind of money. But those farmers, but they can't let the Salton Sea go away. Because if they let it dry up, then you're going to kill people in Los Angeles and San Diego. Farmers have been putting their organic phosphates in there for 100 years, 110 years. Yes, so now they can't let it go away. So they're talking about all sorts of things to do with the Salton Sea. It's a real mess. So they still use all that water down there. And so there's this big push to put water down there. And that is insanely to our favor, that they just need more water down there than we need up here. They use all their water up instantly. The upper basin will never use their share of water, ever. We can't. The biggest cities in the upper basin that use Colorado River water routinely are Green River, Wyoming, Green River, Utah. But that's it. I can't think. And we have a little diversion to the Starvation Reservoir that goes to Provo, and then they've got a diversion to the Denver at the top of the water. They just catch it up there, it just runs, and instead of letting it go this way, they divert it that way. But farmers use it, ag uses it, but down there you've got Tucson, Phoenix, Las Vegas, San Diego, Los Angeles. Ooh, it's gone. And they rely on it. So the upper basin has rural Washington, Colorado water. Now St. George wants to use some of that and no one's gonna let him do it, so.
What would you suggest for people who care about these rivers and?
Well, let me comment on
Again,
rivers, because that's what you,
talking about, how do, you seem to have been a good bridge builder and talking to people across the.
I am
aisle.
non-confrontational. And
So-
so that's true.
So, yeah, but that's critical to make progress, I think, is to be able to.
Well, let me
talk
answer
to those who-
this question. If you could put all your money and effort and talent, and you had the money and effort and talent to do it, would you, but you don't have the time to do all this, you could work on water, river issues like I am. You could work on ocean. You could work on land like Sue does. You could work on clean air, skies. What would you do? You would create national parks like Michael Kelly does, would you? What would you choose? What would you choose? What do you want to say? Mine was rivers, because I like flowing rivers and I learned to hate Lake Powell. And I don't like the word you hate, because, but I do, I can't say dislike it, I hate it. And I hate how it destroyed something so absolutely beautiful, and we can restore it. So the challenge is this: here we have a problem in the West. We drink snow. We drink snow. In Vermont, they drink water. In the Mideast, Midwest, they drink water. I mean, rain. In the South, they drink rain. But we drink snow. And therein is the issue. In order to drink snow, you have to have dams, reservoirs. You have to store it. Now, where do you store it? How do you preserve it? And how do we have the challenge as global climate change is decreasing the snow content in the mountains? So what we just saw. And so we have to look at the issue, and not just the Colorado issue, which I told you about history, but rivers in general provide life to so many things. And when you dam them, you waste water and you destroy the lifeline. So if we are going to continue to drink snow, we have to continue to preserve our rivers. And we can do that. But there's going to be some very tough choices if we're talking about rivers in general. We are very lucky in that we have these 7 creeks that flow out into our valley. And then we have all these little aquifers like Bell Canyon and others, which you can actually drink the well. Emigration is such a place. I drink well water. But you have to be able to have free-flowing rivers if you're going to preserve a society. Environmentalism, sorry, nature loverism, but environmentalism is founded on the single principle of sustainability. And if you want a sustainable environment, you have to listen to the environmentalists. We will preserve the Colorado River. We will give you the water you need to drink, to survive. We will preserve the Great Salt Lake. We will keep water in it, but you have to listen to us. Because in order to keep the Great Salt Lake, in order to keep our lives, in order to drink snow, you have to have free flowing rivers. And we can do that for them. And when I speak to the water people, I say that to them. And they understand that. But when you grow alfalfa unchecked, and when the governor, who I think is a great guy, and he's a wonderful person, I don't disagree, but I don't care about disagreeing people politically. I like people who stand up for what they believe in. And he's a good father, and he believes in what he believes in, and he's trying to do a good job. I admire that. And on water and land issues, I agree, but he owns an alfalfa farm, big one. How are you convince him not to grow alfalfa, right? So these are the challenges that we face. And but I choose to go after rivers because that was what I chose. Now I don't know what you will choose. But the one thing that I think that was stressed to me growing up was to find a cause, a good cause. and fight for it. And I tell my students, whether it's in medicine or whether it's undergraduate, to fight for what you believe in. And not be wishy-washy scientists who are afraid of soiling their white linen because they're afraid that it will damage their reputation. Who are these people? You know, like, this is the thing. I don't mind going to the Bureau and saying, Lloyd Dominey saying, we needed to fight like Kenya. Well, I can argue, debate him. At least you know where he stands, right? Lloyd Dominey was a nice guy. I mean, he's a egotist. But that was an interesting 2 days. Can I tell you a story about these guys? Here's David Brower. And he had not met Floyd Dominey for 17 years. And I took him to the Marriott downtown to dinner at that Allie's restaurant that isn't there anymore. And we were eating. And David Brower looked at Floyd Dominey and said, how's your wife, Floyd? And she said, we lost her 2 years ago, Dave. David Brower started crying. Put his arm out on Floyd Dominey's hand and he put his head down. It just got teary. It was real hard in that guy. Like, you know, however he ran his life in politics, he just took off. But he was a humanist. Dominey wouldn't let his dog in the house. But anyway, so I'll tell you one of the stories, two of the stories, and I'll include the questions. So then it had a hit. Floyd Dominey said, well, we haven't met, but I still am mad at you about the Grand Canyon. You lied to everyone that said we're building dams in the Grand Canyon. We were not building. They pound the table, start swearing at David Brower and yelling, and people are looking. You lied, and we didn't get those dams built because you lied. We weren't building them in the Grand Canyon. The water would go in there, but he's right. The dams, he was still mad, and then they calmed down and started laughing again, talking, and just about everything. So that's how that ended. Then Floyd Dominey invited me back to his house in Boyce, Virginia. So I'm back there. The winter. Drive out there, beautiful, Shenandoah Valley. We get to his property, and there's all these little creeks with dams on them and diverting. It's a true story. And we go in there, and we're sitting and getting ready. We actually went out to eat, but we had some hors d'oeuvres. We were talking. He said, how serious is this movement to drain Lake Powell? I said, it's very serious. Says, well, I'm sorry about the destruction of the Cataract Canyon and Glen Canyon. I said, and I know you like those. He said, we didn't know that we would destroy Cataract Canyon like we did. That we didn't know. He says, I'm sorry. And just okay. But then he said, we started talking. Then we drive to dinner. And the subject came up again. And he said, you know, you're doing it wrong. He said, if you want to drain Lake Powell, you can't drill out the old bypass tunnels. He said, I've been thinking about this. I'm going to show you how to drain Lake Powell. So he gets out a cocktail napkin and he shows the dam, shows the old bypass tunnels. And he said, here's the powerhouse. He says, what you have to do is go around those concrete. We put 300 feet of reinforced concrete in there. You'll never get him. He says, drill around it. Then you put waterproof valves on it. He says, we can do that. He says, that we can do. And he sketched this napkin. And I said, can I keep this? He goes, yeah. And I said, no one's going to believe me that you sketched how to drain Lake Powell. Would you sign it? And he did. He signed it and he dated it. It has been the subject of a lot of news stories, and I have it framed. And people now say I should put it in a safe deposit box, but because that's Floyd Dominey's way of draining Lake Powell. So I asked the question, what would you say? And how would you go about it? And would you be afraid of the fight that you would have to take, whether it be a tree in front of the courthouse, taking down a little low head dam? What would you do? But not everybody, I just sort of got thrust ahead of this movement, but the little things matter. What would you do? And I encourage everyone here, Madison does, to go and fight for the planet and be a nature lover and convince people to love nature and not to be afraid of soiling your shoes and getting in the mud and standing up for what you believe in. And we need to teach our kids and our grandkids to do that. And that's a real challenge. And here I am My career hasn't suffered. But this scientist, I don't have a lot of respect.
It keeps coming up.
Well, it boils me, you
Yeah.
know, like a guy that has so much power. And he could have been a Robert Oppenheimer or someone that stood up and said, I'm a scientist and this is what we need to do. Even though the science, like the science doesn't necessarily support draining Lake Powell and restoring Lake Canyon. I mean, it's a beautiful place. It's just an artistic thing, but that's what we do, though, isn't it? You fight for those
Mm.
plants and animals and the non-use value of land. Do you have to dam everything? Do you have to mine everything? Do you have to drill holes in everything to be valued? Some things are just valuable because they are. And I know Janice said it back, first time I took you down there and you said it took millions of years to create this and man destroyed it in 20. You know, so that never, that's why I should be on our board.
So given that. Probably the majority of people in Utah are nature lovers, but the majority are Republican. And lean kind of away from environmentalism and feel threatened by it. Again, what are some of the language ways and even using the dominant
You're
faith?
talking about in Utah?
I'm talking about Utah specifically, because that's what we have some control over right now, and part of that river is in here, so.
I do it all the time.
So, yeah, but so teach us a little bit, with what little time you have, some skills and
Well,
how to be
I'm at
effective.
LDS specifically,
Well, I mean, that's what we're
'cause I hear-
dealing with. The majority of people that would oppose draining Lake Powell would be LDS people, and probably a lot of them are nature lovers, so. This is I guess a very
I do it all
specific
the time.
concrete question, how do we do that?
Speak to them about God's creations. God did not create dams. God created cathedral in the desert, music temple. God created the species, and these species are endangered because man created this structure. And in order for nature and God to be in harmony, we need to bring these things back. That's how I approach it. And then if we start talking, I say, when was the last time we went to the temple? What did you see? A building? A dam? A city? You saw the creations of God. And so I gave, in NAU once I gave a talk, it was very ecumenical. I quoted
What is NAU?
Northern Arizona University. They did a lot of the recovery, big audience. But I thought, I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to put God into environmentalism. Boy, that was controversial. So I quoted everybody, the Bible, the Book of Mormon. I quoted the Talmud. I quoted philosophers and scientists, and I just made it a spiritual talk with no domination. Oh man, I had people come up afterwards. Don't you ever put God in the environment? There's no such thing as God, and I never want to hear that out of your mouth again. And so I chose that audience more wisely after that. So who you speak to, I think, is important. Some people do not want that, but the LDS people love to hear that. And if you talk about God's creations, you do better, and they understand it. And it's hard not to show a picture of cathedral in the desert and music temple. Say, I've been to cathedral in the desert. You've been to cathedral in the desert, and to look at those redwood ferns coming back out, and the swallows coming back, and these are God's creations coming back to where God wanted them. And that's how I speak to the LDS people.
That's great. Before you have to leave soon. Any other questions?
David has a question.
Yes.
Yeah, it's, port development, I think, when the BLM has declared that land use is not just for extraction. There's another category of conservation and preserving ecology. I think that's a rule or something. That's just this week. What do you think of that? Is that gonna apply? And
Well, so it will, but what's happening, the young people are becoming very environmental. And they are and we know this, and look at this guy. I mean, the young people are upset at destruction of the planet. And so that will hold, and this week, Sue just won a lawsuit about the Glen Canyon GCNRA about getting off-road vehicles down there, because this land that is now out permanently, that Glen Canyon, we always thought would be restored by an edict or by a rule or by a law or agreement. It's just being restored.
My God.
Yeah, well, and it's just going down, and these canyons are coming out permanently. And so four-wheelers are going down there, and so Scott Groening down at SUA said, we're going after that, and so they got it, they won. So the GCNRA now has new rules that they can't take their off-road vehicles down, and people aren't gonna be sad with that. Those canyons cannot be destroyed by. And he did a good job. We worked with him on that. The Glen Canyon Institute and SUA worked to get that lawsuit settled. We don't sue.
Stuvia does.
It's
It's the reason they're named that. Just southern Utah.
They have a 20 some odd staff attorneys, and that's what they do, and they do it well, and that's okay. We need an organization like that. But Glen Canyon has decided we're never gonna sue because people stop talking. Then you have to fight, and we really want to try and work closely with Bureau people and others to try and. So our executive director is a great schmoozer and meets with the Bureau people and sits down with them and talks to them, and they listen to us. Like they say, like, we appreciate what you're saying. And behind the scenes of what's going on in Lake Powell, but we can't see it publicly, is the Bureau people and the 7 basin states know that this is coming. They know that Lake Powell is going to be drained. And they've let the contracts, we know where the new bypass tunnels are gonna be put. They're digging them up because the sediment down there, they know where they're gonna go and how high.
You gotta be loving that.
I wish David Bravo were here,
Yeah.
because everything he said at our first meeting is coming true. He didn't know that when he traded. Now, here's the deal, people say, oh, he lost Glen Canyon for Split Mountain and Echo Park. I'm telling you, that's the most beautiful place in our state. If you ever not floated that, if you go down the Yampa River into Echo Park, you will cry. It's so beautiful. And that was gonna be underwater, all of it. And David Brower stopped it. So even though I'm a little sharp, he saved one of the most beautiful places on the planet Earth.
Where is that? It's in Colorado, right?
It's where the Green River and the Yampa meet.
Okay.
The Yampa comes in from Colorado and crosses the border, and the Green River meet and goes down to what's called Echo Park. It is, the Yampa River, all that, it's stunning. It's gorgeous. It's red rock with pine trees and this free flowing river and animals and plants and birds everywhere, and that was gonna be underwater. And he stopped it. He said they were gonna build a dam, they were gonna have a bill to build 13 or 14 dams, and he said, we're not, because of Hetch Hetchy, we're no longer building dams in national parks. So he got them to pull out those 2 dams, then they built Flaming, which was out of the park. And he said, you can build the rest, just take those out. He didn't know. He said, you can build all the other dams you want, just pull those 2 out. They did. But then he went down Glen Canyon, and the only one time he went down with that camera. And then he just said, man, we have to stop this. And he tried, but it was too late.
Any other questions?
No, I was just gonna say, I actually have read about that. I didn't know, I don't remember that it was David Brower, but it was a choice. And that once he came and saw Glen Canyon, he's like, what have we done? And everything, not that he would have undone it, because I'm sure it was great to save this area, but he just hadn't been there. And it was in the middle of nowhere, and so it's like kind of an easy trade. But yeah, it's.
Well, he was, David Brower, for all of his reckless abandon life, was pragmatic, very pragmatic, and he understood the realities of the Bureau, and if we're gonna get those 2 dams out, you gotta let them build the rest, and that's how it. He said he'd wear sackcloth and ashes for the rest of his life. Can I say, before you answer it, so when I picked him up at the airport for the meeting that night, there are all these press were gonna ask him that, Glen Canyon Institute is gonna train Lake Powell. I said, hey, Mr. Brower, that's what I ended up calling him David. Then I said, Mr. Brower, you're gonna be pressed at the Alta Club. They're gonna talk to you about training Lake Powell. He goes, oh, good, I've been meaning to take care of that. Like, but that's how he thought. Let's just go after it. So that inspired me. I'm sorry. Question.
Very cool.
I apologize for being late because I was at the meeting for Bears Ears, just this.
Good for you. That's right. It was,
Really
yeah.
interesting, and I appreciate what you're saying, but where we live here, we only exist because there are dams in our canyons.
Which came?
Harley's Canyon, you know, Provo Canyon, Beaver Canyon, everywhere we have. There are little reservoirs, and I think, you know, the people who settled here had great forethought in creating those kinds of reservoirs. Do you have the same feelings, or are there differences in the way?
There's very few dams that we really need. Of the 70,000 dams in our country, there's not many we really need. There are some dams that we really need, but there's many dams that we don't. And you don't have to store dams on water and river. You can store it off river, for example. If you want to catch water, you don't have to destroy a river to catch the water. There's a lot of ways you can do that. I drink water from Immigration without a dam, and they store it underground. And so there are ways. So, and at the time that they built those dams, and here's the deal too, like some of those you think it's not worth fighting for because they're further up. But if you start damming the headwaters with the argument that human life is more important than animal life, then you're in trouble right at the get-go. So you have to look for alternatives to these. Probably the most useless dam built is Glen Canyon Dam. It has no purpose. It doesn't do a thing except satisfy the political battle between the upper and lower basin. You better put a dam in there so the lower basin doesn't get their more than their fair share of water. That's the only reason that dam
It's
exists.
producing power, right? For a while.
It's insignificant
Is it?
power.
Okay.
And it produces power on a grid where if they took it away, you lose 1% of the grid, and there's about
Wow.
25%. It doesn't, it's insignificant. But you have to be able to have I do agree with what you said. You have to supply alternatives if you're going to get rid of dams or if you're going to build a community. But you don't have to dam the rivers and destroy the wildlife of the rivers so humans can live. You've got to start thinking of the other species on the planet. And most dams that we looked at, you can provide alternatives. But I do agree, you have to have those alternatives to get mad. They're like real mad.
I think it's the Klamath River that they're taking the dams down.
Mm.
Is that right? There's some.
In Oregon?
In that direction, yeah, Oregon. Is that right? Or is it California?
Well, they're in Oregon, and the first one's gone. And boy, the one that we started at the same time was the Elwha River and the two dams up there. And they said, you take these out, people are gonna die, we're not gonna have water, it's all this gone. Here we are. And now the species are coming back. The whales are coming back because they took those two dams out. Because the salmon populate, they come down and they come on. So there are alternatives and we have to explore those. Yeah.
I just had a question. On the Land Canyon Institute side, like I work with like the communities in Garfield and Kane and San Juan County a lot, and I do know that there's a lot of economic activity generated from Lake Powell, like for those counties, and it's actually one of the biggest economic engines for those like rural communities. Have you guys thought
Tourism,
about?
boating, all that stuff.
There is very few things I have not thought about. when it comes to Lake
I
Powell.
assume that was the case, so I'd love to hear your thoughts. on,
They,
like,
those
how the
people will
communities
build
fill those.
a forever lasting economic bounty around Glen Canyon. That will
The
produce.
natural beauty of the canyon itself.
It will be much better and much more sustainable than the short-term 100-year benefit that Lake Powell will give them, because it is sedimenting in and it is going away. And so we do have to build an economic development around. Go to Moab. They're
And see what
powered,
they're doing,
they're
yeah.
powered by anything but a dam. And they live off the land. The number one recreation in this country is not boating, it is outdoor hiking and climbing. And we need to get that to those people. And people say, well, don't you care about the people in Page? I said, absolutely, I do. They need to start building climbing and hiking and rafting things, and they are they are building that because they know that they're doomed. Dams are not sustainable, they all sediment in. They destroy wildlife and they destroy rivers. And we have to come up with alternatives to them.
So, sorry, Ed, you had something.
Yeah,
So sorry.
you mentioned a couple times that having the dam wastes water. Can you address that?
So You're gonna get me on a soapbox here.
Well, I just, because that, to me,
As
that's
if you haven't
that's a
been.
good argument. That's a good argument that I'd like to know the
It
answer.
is the argument,
Yeah, how does it waste?
Evaporates, right?
seepage.
And
Seepage.
It's like a sponge. And so Lake Powell, we did not, this was the thing. So when I got everyone together, the first meeting, I got environmentalists, I got scientists, I got the Bureau people all in one room, and I said, we're gonna drain Lake Powell, how we're gonna do it. This was in 1996 at the Alta Club on the top, one of the top floors. Brower was there, even KDB was there. I had Bureau people, everyone was in the room, and I just said, okay, everybody sit up, listen. How are we gonna drain Lake Powell? Man, stupid. And the Bureau said, oh, here's how you do it. It loses 8% of the Colorado River's flow every year. I said 8%? Yeah, 8%. That's 3 times Nevada's allotment of water.
Wow.
8%. That number is unchanged. So that's when I meant bingo. So that's how it started. So so we started this based on save water, drain Lake Powell. And so the commissioner of the Upper Basin States called me on the phone. He was mad, like really mad. I mean, he said, "Is this Mr. Ingebretsen?" I go, "Yeah." He said, "I want to talk to you. I'm Wayne Cook. I'm the commissioner of the Upper Basin." I thought, "Oh man." So he said, "I want to meet you down at the Bureau of Reclamation office." It's on the 4th floor in the back. He says, "Can you do it Monday?" And I said, "Sure, I'll be down there." So here was the regional commission reclamation, the Upper Basin commissioner, and all these people around me. Said, "You cannot do this." Said, "We need Lake Powell." And I said, "Why? Like, tell me a reason why we need it." And they came up with these weird things like, well, the lower basin, you need to have a dam there so they don't get more than their fair share. See, the problem is everybody thinks that the dam is there so that the upper basin will deliver their share. It's just bogus. The river will deliver it. You don't need a dam to let water
Yeah,
flow
get the
down
water
the
down.
stream. I mean, is that the stupidest thing? It is there so that they don't get more than their fair share. And that is what scares people. What happened back in the 100 years ago is the lower basin was just building, and you've got Mulholland down there sucking up water out of everything and destroying all those lakes up in the Owens Valley and everything. And Los Angeles was growing. And the first in time, first and right scared the heck out of everybody upper basin. So they said, we got to stop the lower basin, and they came up with this compact, and they said, stop the water there. This is all you get no more. And that's why they did it, because they feared Mulholland and they feared everybody. And that fear is still there. We can't get the Lake Powell drained because it's not because we can't deliver it, it's because they are gonna claim it. And we have all this water that we haven't claimed, not using, and we're afraid that they call it our water. I think the biggest mistake in the Colorado River is that they divided it into 2 basins. How ridiculous, how stupid. And so now that we have these people at odds with each other, but it's the fear that the lower basin is gonna claim it, because first and right, first in time. And since we're not using it, therefore they're gonna take it. And the lower basin says, I met with all those commissioners down there, all the water people. Pat Mulroy, I got to be friends with these people. Imagine me being friends with water managers, like the most boring people on earth.
This is being recorded.
No, they don't have a sense of humor. It's just, they'll just sit and divide up water all day long. And it's like, oh, I don't want to do this, but I go down there. And they say, oh, we're not gonna take their water. No. Just let it come down and we'll use it and pay you for it, you know? So there's all these schemes. Lower basin will pay them, will produce power in the lower basin, and we'll give the upper basin water. We'll, you can count it. We'll keep track of it, and we're not gonna claim it. But the upper basin just says, phooey to that. You're gonna take it and keep it, and that's the problem we have. The only way Lake Powell and it will get drained is the fact that it's just gonna drain, and that they can't use those bypass tunnels. And once we learned that a few years ago, 2 years ago, the upper basin, lower basin came to this weird agreement. I was driving home from hiking in southern Utah, and they said the upper basin, lower basin come to agreement that the upper basin is going to send down a whole ton, or is going to keep on a whole bunch of extra water, and the lower basin says it's okay. I said, what? like a lot of water, like 1.5 million acre feet. We're not, you can keep it. I said, why are they doing that? Why are they letting the upper basin hang on to extra water? And then I got home and I read the monograph on it, and the last statement said the bypass tunnels are not safe. And they didn't want the public to know it, that Glen Canyon Dam is unsafe. Nobody got that by reading the bypass tunnels. They just said the news, KSL, all these things said bypass tunnels can't be used. That should put the fear of God in everybody on the Colorado River, because it's an unsafe dam.
What does unsafe mean?
It means it'll cave in.
We'll just collapse.
It will
I mean, if
cavitate.
the water goes way up. high,
No,
it'll-
if it goes low. If it goes down and they open up those river outlet works, they're over here on this side. If this is the dam, they're over there. And one goes out here and the other goes out here. They turn them on, they're gonna cavitate and they'll cave the dam in.
Which is what happened in 84, was it?
Yes, but that was the spillways. But now they're saying that that's gonna happen to these river outlet works. And everybody just turned the page or went to the next thing, like, and I thought, nobody's scared of that. That dam is unsafe. If
Those are never used, right?
they use them occasionally.
They would really be used once that water got that low.
If it gets below, the power intakes are huge vats. They can hold a ton of water, but these things are tiny. They're designed to hold 25,000 cubic feet per second instead of the millions that they could be to go through the power generating stations. And they didn't say it publicly, but they just said, please let us hold on to water, because we don't know if those structures are safe. I went, oh my gosh, they have never let that out. And then just last week, they said, you can't use them. They went and looked at it, and the engineers said, you cannot use those river outlet
Better
works.
pull out that napkin.
Well, no, so that's people, that's exactly correct. And so the Bureau actually has designed, they haven't put them in, but they've designed and they released publicly where they're gonna go, but that Glen Canyon Dam isn't safe. And so we don't know how to handle that, whether we should scare people or just let the Bureau knows it's unsafe and they're gonna have to do what they do. But that'll be the end of Glen Canyon Dam, is those river outlet works are unsafe. Period. I mean, that's just it. At the board meeting Saturday, that's what all they're gonna talk about is that and how we're gonna handle it. Because that's the big thing. You won't drain Lake Powell because Glen Canyon is pretty. You won't drain it because right now it's just because it's unsafe. And they don't even care about the water so much. Power has nothing to that end, nothing. And the borders on Glen Canyon and Lake Powell mean zero. They have no say. They can write letters, jump up and down and rant and rave on screen, and the water managers will just sweep them off the table. They don't even care about it. Same thing with the power people. You think power has like influence? None. The only thing that matters is water delivery, and those people are insanely powerful. And they are at odds with each other. They fight and they argue and they battle. And the only thing they've come to agreement now is that Lake Powell is like Glen Canyon Dam is safe, and they've got to try and keep it. So that's their goal. Our goal is to we just can say, well, just drain it, use it as a backup.
It was like the meter keeper.
Yeah. Yeah. But you have to have the way it's designed now. So much water comes out of Hoover Dam that the delivery system is so complex that they have to keep it full. They're afraid if they don't have some catch basin, even though they could put it in aquifers, you're never going to convince. You're going to lose Lake Powell. Your younger people will see it going. You will see it going. Hoover will be there probably when the sun supernovas. I don't know, like that is such an indomitable structure.
Yeah.
You know, like you're never going to convince the Coachella and the water, those farmers down there. They're hugely powerful, by the way. They have most of the water. I told you, they have more water than Nevada and Arizona combined for 100 farmers. Isn't that crazy? Crazy.
Back to the upper basin, I'm curious, I'm not understanding, what gives the water management so much power? And the water is just flowing through, not really using it, what's,
Fear.
but
It's fair,
What is that? Like, so they're,
What
are
are
they
they
creating
afraid
fear in the communities or like?
absolutely.
Okay.
You go talk, I've had dinner, lunch, meetings with all of these guys through the years. And they're good people, by the way. These are not, they're not our enemies. We just disagree. They have a really weird view of fear of the lower basin. The upper basin is fearful of the lower basin. Like it's a real fear.
But they're gonna take more than their allotment and we're gonna not have enough eventually. Is that the fear?
Isn't that the stupidest thing? Is that, how do you?
Which communities down there aren't gonna have enough? Is it like, I mean, back to that, is it the recreational communities?
Well,
that
here, the
are-
problem is this, the lower basin, and look here, the lower basin, after World War II, the Department of the Interior said, you've got to develop your water. And so that you've got this compact, use it. So the lower basin had 7.5 million acre feet, and they divided it up to the drop. California gets this, Nevada gets this, Arizona gets this, and then they all divided it up into the counties. The upper basin, which wasn't using nearly their share of water, divided it up by percentage and by how much they had each year to divide up. So the upper basin is a wash in water because we are used to saying, this year we get this much water, we're gonna divide Colorado, Mexico, Utah, Wyoming, we each get this much, and that's how much you get to each of your farmers. So we have never had trouble up here because we don't have the big cities, but the lower basin ran out of water instantly. And that's why they want a lot more water. The biggest thing up and is the thing they're calling structural losses. The seepage and all those canals evaporate water. They don't seal them. Look at the All American Canal. It's just this big open thing in the Mojave Desert. Half of it doesn't get to Los Angeles. 1 million acre feet doesn't get out there. So they're like, yeah, they said, they said you need to take care of that. And the lower and the upper basin says, the lower basin says, that's that's your problem, not ours. Like, so they finally are talking about things. The best thing is they're talking. Okay, now.
Just so you know, you're at about 9.
I know,
so
I
you
gotta
wanna close.
It is mine.
Closing statement.
Did you read the newspaper today? Well, it was on there. I get those feet.
What is this newspaper you speak of?
Well, it's not a newspaper, but they said, it was an interesting article, the guy that, after if I remember, the guy that wrote the Hokey Pokey died.
Oh,
He died, he was 93. He lived in
Turn ourselves
Boise.
about.
He wrote that song for his grandkids and it became real famous, but the article wasn't that they couldn't. Wasn't that he died a month ago, they can't get him, they can't bury him, they can't get him into his casket. Because every time they put the left foot in.
Magic Johnson.
When the right foot, that's good stuff, start shaking. So the article was, does anybody have some suggestions? Okay.
That was good.
That was.
That's your closing statement. I love it.
Thank you.
How many drinks don't you have?
Yeah, this was good.
Great.
Thank you so much. Yeah, let's
Thank
get
you
one.
so much, everybody.
I'm doing a job, Leah. I know, and I appreciate that.
You know, it's not.
Thank you so much.
This next week we get.
Yeah, no,